3 weeks after I buried my husband, his mother sat across from me in my own living room and said, David told us at the very end that he wanted the house and his savings to come to his family, his real family. He knew you'd understand. He said you were never really one of us. She slid a handwritten page across the coffee table. He wrote it down. It was his dying wish. And I looked at that page, and I felt the ground open, until I remembered the phone in David's nightstand and the video I hadn't been able to bring myself to watch. Let me back up. My name is Nadia Bishop. I'm 39 years old, and 3 weeks after my husband died, his family tried to take everything we'd built by telling me his final wish was to erase me from his own life. They almost succeeded, not because their claim was strong, but because grief makes you fragile, and doubt, planted in fresh grief, grows fast. This is the story of how my husband, who I thought had left me nothing but memories, turned out to have left me exactly what I needed to fight back. Let me tell you about David, and about his family, because you have to understand both. David was the warmest man I ever knew, and he came from the coldest family I ever met. The Bishops were old, moneyed, and closed, a family that measured people by pedigree and treated warmth as a weakness. David was the exception, the son who'd somehow grown up kind in a house that prized the opposite, and I think part of why he loved me was that I was warm too, that our marriage was a refuge from the chill he'd been raised in. His family never accepted me. I came from nothing they respected, a middle-class background, a normal job, no name they recognized. His mother, Catherine, had wanted David to marry within their world, and she never forgave me for being the woman he chose instead. For 12 years, she was polite to my face and dismissive behind my back, and David and I built our life slightly apart from them, which suited us both. David and I built that life together, genuinely together. We bought a house, modest by Bishop standards, everything to us, and we paid for it together, my income and his, over years. We built savings together. Everything we had, we made as a team, two people who'd chosen each other over the cold expectations of his family. And then David got sick, fast and cruel, a cancer that took him in 8 months. And in those 8 months, something happened that I didn't fully register at the time because I was drowning in caring for him. His family reappeared, suddenly attentive, suddenly present. Catherine, who'd barely tolerated me for 12 years, was at the hospital constantly, and I was too exhausted and heartbroken to wonder why. I know why now. They were positioning. While I was holding my dying husband's hand, they were preparing to take everything the moment he was gone. David died on a Tuesday. I buried him. And 3 weeks later, 3 weeks, before the grief had even found its shape, Catherine came to my house with a handwritten page and a story. The story was this: that David, in his final days, in private moments when I wasn't there, had told his family he wanted his estate to go to them, not to me. That he'd come to feel, at the end, that I was never really one of them, that his loyalty belonged to his blood, that he wanted the house and the savings returned to the Bishop family. And Catherine had a page, in handwriting she claimed was David's, laying it out. His dying wish. I want to describe what that did to me, because the money was almost the smaller wound. The larger wound was doubt, because grief makes you insane, and I was 3 weeks into losing the love of my life. Catherine was telling me that in his final days my husband had secretly turned against me, had decided I was an outsider, had chosen his cold family over his warm wife, had wanted to erase me. And some broken, grieving part of me thought, what if it's true? What if, at the end, in pain and fear, he reached for his blood and let go of me? What if the marriage I thought was a refuge was something he abandoned when it mattered most? That doubt was the real weapon. The Bishops didn't just want my house. They wanted me to believe my own husband had stopped loving me, because a widow who believes that is a widow who won't fight, who might even sign the house away out of guilt and grief and the terrible fear that she was never really wanted. I almost did. That's the part I have to be honest about. Catherine was so certain, the page looked so much like his hand, and my grief was so total that for a few days I moved through the world believing my husband's last act had been to choose against me. I stopped eating. I couldn't sleep. I sat in the house David and I had built, believing he hadn't wanted me to have it, and the loneliness of that was worse than the funeral. And then I remembered the phone. David, in his last weeks, had asked me for his old phone, the one in his nightstand, an earlier phone he'd kept. He'd been weak and private about it, and he'd spent some time with it alone, and I'd assumed he was looking at old photos, the way the dying do, revisiting a life. I hadn't thought about it since. But 3 weeks after his death, sitting in the house his family was trying to take, drowning in the doubt they'd planted, I remembered him with that phone, and something made me go find it. It was still in the nightstand. I charged it. And when it came on, there was a video file recorded during those last weeks, titled with my name. I hadn't been able to bring myself to look at anything of his yet, but I watched this, and it was David. Thin and tired but himself, his eyes still warm, talking to the camera, talking to me. And what he said I will carry for the rest of my life. He said, "Nadia, if you're watching this, I'm gone, and I'm so sorry, my love. I made this because I know my family. I know exactly what they're going to try to do the moment I'm not here to stop them. So I need to say some things clearly on camera, where there's no confusion. Everything we built is yours. House, the savings, all of it. We built it together and it belongs to you completely, and my will says so, the real will, the one with Marcus, my lawyer, not anything my mother might produce. I'm telling you on camera because I know they'll try to claim I want it otherwise. I know they'll come to you with some story about my real family and my dying wishes. They may even forge something. My mother is capable of it. So hear me clearly. Any claim that I wanted my family to have anything over you is a lie. I never said it. I never wanted it. The only thing I want, the only dying wish I actually have, is for you to be safe and taken care of in the home we made. And Nadia, because I know how they work, I know they'll try to make you doubt us. I'll tell you I turned against you at the end, that I decided you weren't really one of them, that I chose my blood over you. So let me be as clear as I have ever been about anything. You were not an outsider in my life. You were my life. My family was the outside. You were the inside. 12 years with you was the warmest thing that ever happened to a boy who grew up cold, and I chose you every single day, and I'm choosing you now, from whatever this is, from the last clear days of God. Don't let them make you doubt that. Don't let them take the house, and don't you dare believe, even for 1 second, that I loved you any less at the end than I did at the beginning. I loved you more. Dying only made it clearer. Call Marcus. He is everything. And live in our house and be happy, and know that you were loved completely by a man who saw exactly what his family would do and made this video so they could never make you doubt it. Yours, always yours. I watched it 11 times that night, and I wept, but it was a different weeping than the days before because the doubt was gone, burned away by my husband's own face and voice, and what was left was grief and fury and a spine of steel. Here is what I did. First, I called Marcus, David's attorney, the next morning, and Marcus confirmed everything. There was a real will, properly executed, leaving the entire estate to me exactly as David said. Marcus had it. It was airtight. He'd been David's lawyer for years and knew the bishops well, and when I told him about Catherine's handwritten, dying wish page, he sighed and said, I was afraid of this. David was afraid of this too. That's why he was so careful. Nadia, whatever she showed you, it has no legal standing against a valid will. A handwritten note produced by an interested party after death, contradicting an executed will, is worth nothing in court. And if she forged it, that's a serious crime. Second, I had the video, which was more than a legal instrument. It was the thing that made me whole. But it was also devastating evidence, because in it, David explicitly predicted his family's exact scheme, named it in advance, and refuted it in his own voice. Third, I stopped being a grieving widow the bishops could push around and became a woman with a valid will, a lawyer, and a video of her husband describing his family's fraud before it happened. And I chose to let them come to me. Catherine came back, of course, to press her dying wish, expecting to find me softened by 3 weeks of the doubt she'd planted. She sat in my living room again, and she began her practice speech about David's true loyalties and his real family, and I let her finish. Then I said, Catherine, I want to show you something. David made it in his last weeks, for me. And I played the video. I watched Catherine's face as her dead son's voice filled the room, describing her, by implication, with total accuracy, predicting her scheme. Calling her forgery a forgery before she'd even committed it. Telling his wife, from beyond his own death, that she was his life and his family was the outside. I watched Catherine understand that David had known exactly who she was, had seen this coming, and had reached out of his own grave to stop her. He knew, I said quietly. He knew you'd come with a story about his dying wishes. He knew you'd try to make me doubt whether he loved me. He made this so you couldn't. The will is with Marcus, and it's valid, and it leaves everything to me. And that page you showed me, I think very carefully, Catherine, about whether you want a court to examine the handwriting on a document you produced after your son's death to contradict his actual will. Because that is a name, and it isn't dying wish. It's forgery. Here is how it ended. Catherine folded because there was nothing to do but fold. The real will was valid and unassailable. The video not only destroyed her claim, but exposed the fraud she'd attempted, and she had no interest in a handwriting analysis of her forged page becoming a legal matter. The bishops retreated into the cold silence they'd always kept me at, and this time I was grateful for it. The house was mine. The life David and I built was mine. His family never got a dollar of it, exactly as he'd made sure. But the estate was never what mattered about that video, and I think David knew it wouldn't be. What mattered was the doubt. Because the bishop's cruelest weapon was never the fake will. It was the lie that my husband had stopped loving me at the end, that he'd chosen his blood over me, that our marriage was something he let go of when it counted. That lie could have poisoned my grief for the rest of my life. I could have spent decades wondering if the man I mourned had secretly turned from me in his final days. David didn't just save my house, he saved my grief. He made sure that when I mourned him clean, knowing, in his own words, that he'd loved me more at the end, not less, that I was his life and never the outside, that he chose me from the last clear days he had. His family tried to make my mourning into a torment of doubt. David reached out of his own death and made it instead into what mourning should be, pure and certain and warm. 3 weeks after I buried my husband, his family told me his dying wish was to erase me. His actual dying wish was a video in a nightstand drawer, made in his last weeks by a man who knew his family to the bone, and it said the opposite of everything they claimed. It said, "You were my life. Don't let them make you doubt it. Live in our house. You were loved completely. They thought grief would make me easy to rob." They forgot that the man they were robbing me of had loved me enough to see them coming, and to leave me his voice, so that at the worst moment of my life, I would never have to wonder whether it had all been real. It was real. He made sure I'd always know.